Imagine this. You plant a tree today, and if all goes well, it's going to stand tall for the next 100 years. Some trees, like this pine right here, can actually live to be hundreds and hundreds of years. Ironically, that remarkable trait that makes these trees so awe-inspiring may be what's going to be putting them at risk. As our Canadian climate gets warmer, our forests are going to change, and that means that trees that are thriving in their home right now might not do so in the next 50 years. So what can we do to help our forests adapt? Well, that's where our scientists come in.
Hi, my name is Trevor Jones. I'm a research scientist with the Canadian Wood Fibre Centre and the co-science lead of the Adaptive Silviculture for Climate Change study here at the Petawawa Research Forest. The Petawawa Research Forest is a 10,000 hectare forest. It was established in 1918 to do research into various forest management activities and to try and sustainably grow the pine forests that are here. It's been in place since then and very active. We have thousands of research plots in the forest. We have a whole bunch of silviculture trials. Silviculture is essentially the process of growing and establishing trees and managing forests. It involves many steps from harvesting to site preparation, to planting and tending of trees in the forest, as well as monitoring them through their life. The reason we're doing this study is to make sure that the forestry that we're doing now will result in healthy and productive forests in the future. So under a climate change scenario, they're anticipated to be hotter and drier in this region. So a lot of the tree species that we see here now are anticipated to be struggling and dying off as a result of that extra heat and drought conditions. Resistance is basically a methodology where we try and sort of maintain the current species composition on the landscape by, in our case, planting trees that may be more resistant to the future climate conditions, which will allow us to maintain white pine forests sort of into the future. Our resilience treatment looks to provide sort of structures and species within the forest that are able to withstand some of that change in climate, so those drier, warmer conditions, and so we have more layers within the forest and greater species diversity. And our transition treatment is really looking at changing the entire forest itself and planting new things that haven't been here in the past. And so really changing it to pine forests, but different pines that may be more representative of southern forests, which are warmer and drier now. We employed different harvesting techniques, and so in the resistance we used a uniform shelter wood, and so we're removing about 50% crown closure, so half of the volume of the trees was removed, and we left sort of the biggest, healthiest trees to provide seed and shade for the new generation underneath. The resilience treatment was an expanded gap shelter wood, so basically punching big gaps in the forest and then regenerating those to a variety of different species, oaks and pines and things like that. And then we do mechanical site preparation. So a skidder comes through with a rake on it and pushes the tops and branches out of the way, so it mixes up some of the soil to allow planting. And then right before the plant, they come through and do a chemical site prep, which knocks back some of the raspberry and blackberry and competing tree species so that the trees that we plant have a chance of surviving. And then after that, we plant our trees in all of these harvested areas. and then we follow up a couple of years later with another tending treatment. Petawawa is a predominantly white pine forest. There's little bits of red pine mixed within it, as well as a whole bunch of red oak and other species in smaller amounts. We're moving towards planting different white pine species from southern locations that are currently adapted to warmer and drier conditions.
So I'm bagging up with some white pine seedlings from the Niagara Falls region down in southern Ontario. We're getting these guys ready. I'm putting them in my planting bags and we're going to take them out to the research plot to get planted. So I'm planting a little red oak seedling. Each one of our seedlings is marked with a pigtail, which will get an identification number. So we know as these things grow up into the future, what species they are, where they're from, and what time zone they're from. And we can track the growth of these guys throughout their lifespan to see how they're doing and adapting to climate change under this harvest condition. Clear the ground with a scree, expose that mineral soil, get in there with your shovel. That's it. She's good for another 100 years. So we're also planting white oak into our research plots with climate change in oak. They're finding down in the US, so they use white oak to produce barrels, casks for bourbon, whiskey, wine. And with the lack of oak production and oak acorns and regeneration of oak within the forests, the oak barrel making industry is getting worried and concerned about where they're going to get their oak wood. So we're putting in some white oak and also red oak into our forest, introducing it up into these latitudes, especially the white oak. With climate change, these might become the major source for white oak going forward into the future for a niche industry such as the barrel and cask making.
The ASK project itself is a long-term research project. We're expecting to get results over the next 20 to 30 years. Our first results will start coming in next year. Our plan is to go out and remeasure sort of the mortality and survival of the seedlings that we planted this year, as well as to remeasure all of our research plots within the harvest areas. And we plan to return and evaluate these stands, every year or two for the next 20 or 30 years.
Well, I guess it makes sense. You need to plant the right tree in the right environment for it to thrive. And if that environment is changing, you need to plan and really plant accordingly. If you're interested in planting a few trees yourself, but you're not sure which ones to choose, check out the video on screen right now. Our dendrologist Ken Farr gives us some great options of trees to plant in an urban area. Make sure you do all the YouTube things, like and subscribe, and keep an eye out for our next video.